a chance to do a traveling from here to Rensselaer last couple of times in about the last week. It's that time of year. We had lots of confessions. We had our first reconciliation this morning with some of our families. They had it last Saturday. I was down there driving down on Wednesday for their penance service. And as I was leaving in the late afternoon, with all the ice on 10 and then over on 231, I thought, so you know how the scriptures say, lower the mountains and fill in the valleys and basically make everything smooth, but Lord, I mean, this is too smooth. This ice is way too slippery for all this. And if you've ever been south of here, you do notice, like many parts that I've lived in Indiana, the land itself is, maybe to put it kindly, nondescript. Just flat, not a lot of landmarks, maybe more land man-made. And frankly, between here and Rensselaer, and especially if you get over into Newton County, it's one of the least populated areas in the whole state. So ain't much out here. And yet, there is some way in which we're still invited to say, well, why is it that we're here and not somewhere else? There is, I think, a delicate balance that we have in our own spiritual journey and in our Advent season, where we're invited to maybe a deeper reflection of two aspects. One is the fundamental orientation of our life. If we're preparing a way for the Lord, is the general orientation of our life towards God. Sometimes we get a lot of other things that are going on, and we realize that I may label myself in some ways, but I'm not sure my heart is actually going in that direction. And sometimes we need somebody kind of new to this, the gift that Dawn gives us today, to say, yeah, I need to maybe make that fundamental orientation. And if we don't, then we can do a lot of great things. We can be good people. But are the good things in our deeds, are they really rooted in what God is calling us to do? And we want people to be aware of that, because there's something about it. It's like a multiplier effect that grace builds upon our goodness. And really, our moral life is flowing out of that general orientation toward God. So if we don't have that, then we're basically not really even a religion. We're just sort of a moralistic, a group with moralistic guidelines. So on the other hand of that is that if we're so spiritual and oriented toward God in a very generic way, but not really paying attention to the details and the specifics of our life, then we might be actually thwarting a lot of grace, or not really living out the way in which, in whatever season of life that we're in, God is wanting to use us to be His instruments of His grace and His love. That's a little bit of what's happening in today's gospel. We're in actually chapter 3 of Luke's gospel. So it's actually after the birth of Jesus, but it's all this reference to John the Baptist getting ready for Jesus to appear and begin his public ministry. And so he's been preaching a baptism of repentance. So getting people to say, get back to orienting your life in that general way towards God. But then he gets these questions, like, how am I to do this? Well, he's addressing people in the specific details of their life. Like if you're a tax collector, don't be cheating people and taking advantage of them just because you have basically a franchise with the Romans that you can charge extra and make a little extra money while you're collecting taxes for them. If you're a soldier, treat people with some basic human dignity and don't take advantage because of your military might. to make something a little bit more comfortable for yourself, but really imposing on other people. And he gives these very specific instructions about how to behave, but not in a moralistic way, to say, when your life is oriented to God, then you're going to pay much more attention in whatever way, wherever place that you find your life, that God is operating in your life, and where he can expand your experience of his love, and then with your heart expanded with that way that's made level and smooth, then flowing out of us is the world being filled with his love. See, remember Advent, we're getting ready for, we say Christmas, but it's really the celebration of the mystery of the incarnation, that God became a specific person, the Word made flesh. There's something about being a human being, there's nothing generic about it. Everyone has their specific experience in a specific time, in a specific place, of what it means to be a child of God. And so whatever way, God is very uniquely, but there's so much that we have in common, and there's so much in the way in which we kind of know what each other is going through, so it's never just so individual that it's disconnected from each other, in which we support each other and move forward, but in our own ways, answering God's ongoing call to how today, how tomorrow, we're going to live out our life of faith. So once again, Don gave us a great example of the more that he's being filled with that faith, the more he wants to live it out in his specific life. And now that he's discovered this, after a bit of a journey with maybe a little bit just longer way to get here, we're finding our way home. And I think for us, that's really the point, is can we find, wherever we're at in our life, even if we're not sure about the circumstances, can we just say, this is where I'm to land, this is my home. And even if it has some of its challenges and struggles, or even if it's just something I can't believe is a dream come true, can I live that out in the best way I can? And that's expressing my general orientation to God. I ran across a story, some people that met here in Jasper County. This is almost like some Dutch kid, a local Demont girl. It's 200 years ago. And this guy from Kentucky somehow made his way up into Jasper County. That's a miracle in itself, early 1800s. And then the other miracle is this girl made it over from Ohio, in the hills of Ohio, east of the east part of Ohio. And somehow these two people landed here in this county. I'm sure maybe after a while, young people was like, what else are you going to do? Here's my nice neighbor. And they got married, had a bunch of kids, and they had a bunch of kids. And what I found just recently discovered this is the beauty of that is that buried 15 miles from here in the middle of nowhere, because that's what's there, are my great-great-great-great-great-grandparents. And when I realized that part of why I'm here is because my family's been here, if that doesn't fill you with a sense of call, but ultimately of joy on this Gaudate Sunday, I can't tell you what else will do it for you. But whatever way that you are at where you're at now in your life, and that today, especially in this Eucharist, you say, I want to orient my life in general to God, and then I want God's Spirit to lead me into the specific ways to live that out. That is the invitation in this Advent season to a life full of grace, which is a life filled with joy. So as we get ready to celebrate the great mystery of the Incarnation in Christmas, as we look forward to the final coming of Christ in our world, let us make that our prayer, that we can be open to that grace and that we can be instruments to help Jesus to fill the world with his joy.